Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of our Simulated Air Tanker Operations Brief Series. So today I'm going to be basically just going over some of the changes that have gone on since our last update video. Realistically, the projects that I'm going to be talking about are pretty much the same as the last video, but there's been a lot of changes in between all of these projects. So as you can see below here, this is the one of the Bell 212 models that I've converted over and done the firefighting modifications to. This is essentially what it will look like now in at least P3D. This is the overhauled textures are on these that I also developed with the 412s. These are improved even more with the shading and all this. Like I said, this is how it'll look. I'm assuming the shading should be similar to how it works in FSX, but P3D it looks a little bit better because of the way that the program is. But as you can see, these have turned out very, very well. I'm very happy about how these are. I went over the last repaint, which I can probably show you on here, but I'll go through some of the models real quick. I don't want this video to go too long, but there's kind of a lot to talk about, so it might run a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but we'll see how that goes. So in terms of these models, there's going to be a few different versions. Like I was saying before, there's going to be 3 versions of these, the Helitanker versions with the tank on the bottom and the snorkel, and there will be 3 versions of the Bambi bucket versions. So I did include additional versions on both models to include the nose radome version. Most of the ones in the US don't have the radome versions, but there are a few operators like out there that do have them. So Rogers Helicopters in particular, which is one of the liveries that I represented on those models, has them, and I believe a few others do, as well as there's foreign operators that have the 212 that do have the radome nose. But we can kind of go through some of these. Some of these I'm still working on the textures for. They'll need to be cleaned up. This is one of the Helitanker versions that does not have some of the features on it. Like this one here does not have the FLIR nose, the FLIR pod on the nose, but it does have the hoist and the searchlight. Searchlights, unfortunately, I tried to see if I could get them to work in a fashion that would be, equivalent to what a searchlight would be, and I just couldn't find a solution for that. So unfortunately, they're just for looks. But the hoist does work with these, like the 412s did. Let's see. This model here is one of the ones that I kind of just added just because. Now you can see it has the FLIR and the hoist on it, but no tank. I decided to include a SAR version that can be equipped with a Bambi bucket, because in a lot of areas that they operate, they're in this configuration you see here 95% of the time. They don't have the bucket on them. But they're used primarily for search and rescue or medical transport or things like that. So I decided to include a version like that in this package because there were some requests after I did the 412s to have a search and rescue or a medevac version converted. So this is kind of, to those people that maybe wanted that with the 412s. Now there are other people out there, I hear, that want to do work with the 412s more to convert other models, so that'll probably come at some other time from some other person. My main focus is on obviously firefighting, so this version came about because of that, just because who knows how long it'll be before that happens, because as far as I know, the only other Huey versions available in P3D, for example, are the ones from Saracen, which are fantastic models. I don't have the 412, but I do own their 212 model. It's great. These are going to be, halfway decent for being freeware. So this is the last version. This is from Kachina Helicopters. This is the last repaint that I did for this model. And like I said, with the shading and all the additions that I did to these for P3D, I mean, they were great models to begin with. But you know, I just basically updated them is all I'm doing with these. So as you can see, this is what they're going to look like in the sim, pretty much. You know, along with the environment and all that. So with the deployment of either the Bambi bucket or the snorkel system, they're both going to be tied to the tailhook key. So they're going to be there's no difference between the two. You want the snorkel, you hit the tailhook, whatever your tailhook key is. Want Bambi bucket, you hit the keys for that. Now I'll include readmes for these, obviously, for how to operate the hoist, because there is a little bit of a process for it if you're not familiar with it. But the hoist versions and the FLIR and all that, the versions that operate them, technically they'll work on all these models, but the way that it's coded. But the ones that in particular will have that those options, I'll include directions in the README how to use those features in P3D. So in terms of the other projects that we've got in the lineup here, if you weren't following on the page, or you have, or you forgot about it, the Electra project is actually a go again. So with the Electras, we had a bit of a hiccup in their possibility of them being used and being converted into tankers. But luckily, I was able to get in contact with FSKBT and got permission to officially do this modification. Now, they did only allowed me to do this single tanker modification. So basically just adding the tank to it, and that's basically it. So I'm not going to be overhauling any of the lighting or adding any extra effects or any of that to it. It's basically just the tank, and that's it. How it is in this package is basically how it came out to them with the updated sounds. That's basically all this is going to have done to it. So that's my plans for this. I do plan on doing the entire airspray fleet. I do have some resources from some people have provided me photo references to do the entire fleet of aircraft, and I thank you people who in the background have provided me those reference photos. That helps tremendously in doing what I am doing when it comes to the repainting. Having as much reference photos of these from all different angles helps so much in differentiating the differences between the models, because they're not all the same. Some have paint variances and things like that I like to represent as being variations. Variety's a wonderful thing. So these will be, so I'm going to do the entire airspray fleet, but I'm looking to probably update or upload that entire fleet repaint separately, but at the same time that I release the model. So the model itself, I plan on just coming with Conair repaints and one for Buffalo. So it'll come with basically just 2 repaints. And then the airspray fleet package will come out with it, but separate, because just to keep the file sizes down. With the 212, I haven't really looked at file sizes yet, but it's going to be pretty large because of how many liveries and models there are involved with it. I think the last time I checked, it was something like 19 or 20 variations for that model, so that file size might be a little large. I just like to let people know that it could take a while, especially if you're downloading them from Symbiation and don't have a membership account there. It takes a long time to download larger file sizes, so I like to let people know that, or if they will need to make space on their hard drive for whatever reason. But that's a quick update on the Electras. The Electras are officially a go, and they are going to be worked on as soon as I'm done with the Bell 212s, which hopefully I'm hoping to start on the file cleanup process for those this week, and hopefully they'll be done and ready to be uploaded sometime this month. I'm hoping by the middle of the month. This would be August of 2020 at this particular moment in time. So we can go move on, I want to say, to the MD-80s. The MD-87s, let's see, we will bring up the overhaul version. So if you remember, I've talked about this briefly, but now the tank that we have on here is done by Jeremy, our modeler. He had some previously modeled and allowed me access to them, and I've attached them to these. And I've gone through and I've started to update the textures for basically be used in P3D. I haven't decided yet, or haven't tested yet with these to see if I can get the conversion over to work with the FSX model, or it's just going to be strictly P3D. That's something that I will be looking into around the time that I'm working on the getting closer to being done with the Electras. This is another model I know people would probably want to see because they're being used more and more often. So there's not really a whole lot updated with these. My main focus right now obviously is finishing the 212s and the Electras. So I can go back actually to the Electra real quick because I can show you all. So here we go. This is the preview for the Buffalo Airways Electra. Buffalo has several repaints that are out already for it. That's the plain white and green. I decided to do this one because it's different, and I hadn't seen anybody do this particular paint job yet for it. So that's why you see this one here. So that basically does it for the updates for the model conversion projects. Now, I was thinking about maybe releasing another aircraft that I'm looking at possibly doing. You might have seen an update video on the page where I was talking about possibly tackling the Namath S64 Sky Cranes. I do have some prototype versions of those I've been working on, but the issue with those being is that they are a payware aircraft, and I would have to get permission from Milviz, I believe, to modify them. So that's something that I am looking into, but that's not a definite confirmation that that's something that'll be worked on. In the meantime, though, a while back I did promise that in between all of these repaint projects that I was going to try and get more of these repaints out in between these large model conversions projects so that we have content still coming out while content's being worked on. And it also gives me a chance to take a break from, you know, moving parts around and on these other projects, these other conversion projects, and, you know, doing library work for those. So you may have seen that I released some for the Saracen Firehawk mod recently. That's a continuing modification or series of textures that I'll keep doing as more and more come out for the Firehawks. I'm also planning on doing some repaints for the regular Saracen Blackhawk, because there are firefighting operators out there that operate just with a Bambi bucket, and if you use Firefighter X, you know, equipping the Saracen Blackhawk with a Bambi bucket is a pretty popular thing to do. I do it sometimes. So looking at doing some repaints for just those, if you don't want the Firehawk modification, or you want to fly just the slick version of the Blackhawk for firefighting, then I'm going to be planning on doing some repaints for those, as well as maybe doing some for the stock P3D Verdavia Blackhawk, just to kind of bridge the gap. So if you have P3D and you don't have the Saracen Blackhawk, you can still get some firefighting repaints in that regard. So I am looking at possibly doing those at some point, you know, adding some more rotary wing repaints in there. I did finish a Vistaliner 737-300 for New South Wales Rural Fire Service, since they've recently repainted Tanker 138 to be Bomber 210. That's something that I wanted to try and represent for our Australian members. It actually is kind of a halfway interesting paint job because I didn't know they were going to do this. There was some rumor that they were going to repaint it, but it stayed the same livery. They just kind of removed some things from it this past fire season down there in Australia, and then all of a sudden this past winter down there in Australia, this model here just, you know, this paint job just kind of appeared. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I'll have to update the library. So here it is. I mentioned that I was going to hold on to this for a little while to see if any more reference photos came out for finishing the underside of the wings. Unfortunately, with this model, the way that it's mapped on the belly here, I can't put the belly decals on it. I've tried doing it and working with it, and it just turns out absolutely horrible. So I've decided to omit it, to make the model, at least look halfway decent. So these are also freeware. They're not. I am not doing any further repaints for the PMDG 737s. It's mostly going to be freeware focused stuff like this, the Vista Liners converted 737s. So these I plan on releasing fairly soon. I may just go ahead and release them regardless of doing the underside of the wings, because I don't know when those will come out. So if anything, the main part of the livery will be released. So those repaints. And then I am also working on the 747 Super Tanker. This is also a freeware version. This is actually the Sky Spirit, I believe, 747. There was they absorbed Project Open Sky, and then it was converted to FSX native, so it can be working both FSX and P3D. I am working on this livery as well. You may have seen the video of me flying it around in P3D. So I am working on releasing this livery as well. So this is kind of going along the lines of that promise that I gave, that I'm going to be doing small one-off repaint projects to try and get content out. So this is be another repaint project that I'm working on. Like I said, this is also a freeware model. So whenever I go to upload these repaints for freeware aircraft like this, I try to put them on Simviation, because Simviation has an option where you can, as an uploader, you can actually link the required file to the repaint that you do, so that it makes it easier for people to get the whole package essentially in one area. It's easy to find. You don't have to go hunting on a website full of a bunch of hundreds of thousands probably of different models and variations of them. So it's a little bit more work on my part, but it makes it easier for you all to to get these into your sim without too much of a headache. So I think that pretty much covers what will be done in this particular upload. And just keep an eye out on the page, the Facebook page, and our new Discord channel if you haven't already done that. A link will be in. I'll put one in the description here on YouTube, down below, and obviously through posts and things like that I update on the Facebook page, will also include the Discord link from time to time to allow new members to join. And thanks for watching. Tune into the next one.